Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Neeson. I'm the project officer for the flexible funding model. Many of you all have seen me in years past. For those that haven't, again, I'm Mary Beth Neeson. It used to be I was with the Office of Partnerships. As of today, October 1st, FDA is completely restructured. And not that it affects your life too much, but now I'm in the Office of Domestic Partnership in the Division of Domestic Partnership Investment. So in case you wanted to know that, you now have that. More importantly, we're here about the flexible funding program that's run through NEHA from FDA, and for them to describe to you what's going on, what changes have been made, how to apply to make this process as smooth as possible. I want to give a big thank you to NEHA and all the players that are in there. I wouldn't have enough time to even tell you all their names that have worked so diligently to get this up and running with a late award made to them. So they have worked very hard to try to make this the best experience it can be for you all. One important note I want to say is as they go through these changes today, some of them will be very minor, just to make the system work better for you guys. Some of them might be a little bit bigger to make the system work as a whole for everybody better. We base these changes off of not just your feedbacks. So as you go through this grant process, please make sure you provide your feedback. We use that, but we also use information from our data analysis with what is working well, what wasn't working so well, how do we best fund the most amount of high quality applications that we can in a year. There were lots of factors that went into it. And just know that we did our due diligence before we made these changes. So hopefully these work out for everyone and we're able to show even better progress than we did in the last 3 years. As we move forward through this meeting, I hope you'll take the time to take notes on anything that you feel is important. Know that the NEHA team is available to you after this call, and they'll give you that information at the end, but they are wonderful ambassadors for this program that can help you if you're seeing any issues that you don't understand or the guidance isn't as clear as you might hope it be or anything like that. They're there to help you. So I'm super proud of this program. I know we're going to, again, have a wonderful, successful year and look forward to all your applications and to issuing out those grants and getting that work done. So right now, I'll turn it over to Rance Baker with NEHA, and he can give a few words as well. Go ahead, Rance.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and thank you so much for all the support you've given us and encouragement, advice, intellect, everything that you brought into this program there. You know, the driver behind us way before we got it was you. So I can remember going to a number of road shows that you had out there where you were talking about the flexible funding model program out there. And, you talked and you listened, and I watched it as it changed over the program there as well too. So, it morphed into what it is, but I'm really proud to be involved with this, and I am really thankful to have you as a partner on this and FDA. So thank you. Before I dive into today's session, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the immense devastation that's been caused by Hurricane Helene. The impact on the communities are, for many of us have been profound. And I know many of you are out there. You are the environmental health professionals, and you've been out there working tirelessly to protect public health and to support the recovery efforts. I'm so proud of your dedication and support that you give to this program. You truly, truly do make a difference, every one of you. And it's a heartfelt thanks from all of us at NEHA for everything you do there. We're talking about food safety, but you all do so many different things besides food safety when it comes to environmental health. North Carolina is one of the areas that's hit there, but I want to talk about some of the positive stuff about North Carolina. You're going to hear some big changes that are coming into this program here. A lot of what's coming this cycle that's just starting today is the same as it was, but there's some other changes that as we traveled the country, we saw some really good programs that were taking place and initiatives that were happening. And in North Carolina, in Asheville, I sat down with a group of folks as we talked about the networking that's happening in the North Carolina area there. And there's a group of incredibly dedicated people who were working to build this statewide community to say, how do we help each other move forward there? Because as a group, we're much more powerful than we are as individuals trying to do the same thing. And as you travel to the West, you saw networks over there. And as you travel to the Northeast, you saw networks there. we're really writing networks into the program this time through, and you're going to hear Art talk about a lot of the initiatives we're doing, but really listen to this area about networking, because I think this is an area that what you're going to find we're helping you build the support around you. So I'm hoping you're really excited about this program as much as we are. I'm not going to take up any more of your time because you're probably going to have questions afterwards. We're all here to answer them. And so at this point, first of all, thank you. If you've been part of the program already, you are the reason why it's successful. And if you're just coming into this program, this cycle, you've got a lot of great folks around you who can give you support on this. So Art Johnstone, you take it over. You've got the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And everyone, I just wanted to point you to your Zoom toolbar, which should be on the bottom of your screen. If you've got questions that aren't answered, as they emerge, go ahead and put them in the Q&A, not the chat, but next to the chat, there's Q&A. Please put those in Q&A. If you put a question in during registration, we have that and we're going to address it. But if you have new questions or if they emerge, please use Q&A. And also, we're going to give you a chance to verbally ask questions. We want to reserve at least 15 or 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. So there's going to be a lot of time to dig in. But without further ado, I'll jump in. And I don't like to talk about this grant program without really lifting up the whole point, which is we want to support and grow the voluntary National Retail Food Regulatory Program standards, shorthand the retail program standards. The goals of that program are inspectional uniformity and consistency at your own pace. It's voluntary, but we're trying to get to the same place by the end. It's all about, and this grant program too is about relationships with other jurisdictions, local states, tribes, territories, and also federal partners working together. It is about assisting each other and receiving assistance. It's about inclusiveness, meaning that all retail food jurisdictions, all they need to do is register, which takes about a day for the program, and you're in the retail program standards. But you can also register for this grant program very quickly. Usually in a couple hours, you can register for the grant program if you're already enrolled in the standards, and you can begin a grant application. And last but not least, all of this has to do with building that integrated food safety system, which is local, starting at the bottom, locals, states, tribes, territories, and the federal partners and industry working together to have safer food and lower numbers of foodborne illness. So about, one of the big questions is what's the same and what's different. And we're going to just talk about some of the what's the same, what's different very briefly. And then we're going to get right into talking about the 5 different kinds of grants we're offering and the details of those. And by the way, this PowerPoint it's busier than normal because it's designed to be mini grant guidance. We want a lot of details in here. We're not going to necessarily voice every single one, but this PowerPoint is going to be posted very quickly to the website so that you can have this as you're thinking about applying and as you're applying for the program. But in a nutshell, what's the same? You've got to be enrolled in the retail program standards to be qualified. That's an easy process. Any food safety jurisdiction can do that. And we have information on our website on how to do that. That's different than registering for the grant program. You enroll with FDA and then you register for the grant program with NEHA. Again, all of that is spelled out in both the grant guidance and on the website. And again, grant program registration information, everything you need is at neha.org/retail-grants. Also, if you just put in NEHA RFFM in any search engine, they're going to take you right to this site. The grant portal is for everything that you do as a potential grantee, and as a grantee, you use the grant portal to do that. You register if you're new, you apply through that portal, you do your reporting, you get to see your grants once you've had award mades. If you've ever registered or applied, even if you didn't win a grant, you have an existing login. All you need is your email address. You can put that in from the grant the grant landing page, which you go to the grant portal, hit a grant landing page. If you have an email address, you can recover your username, you can reset your password and get in. If you have any trouble, we've got lots of places, including in this PowerPoint, on how to get the help you need. I do see a hand up. Michelle Boyd. Does Michelle have the ability to talk?
I'm giving it to her right now.
Okay, great. Michelle, you may have the floor. Michelle, I'm going to move on. Feel free to use the Q&A, but we'll open this up again. We might have some troubleshooting to do. We do have a full year grant performance period. Well, probably not quite. We would hope to open on January 1st, but with the late start we've had, we think it's going to be more like January 14. But your grant performance period, you might not get the award till the 14th, but we are going to have that full year for you. And then in the future years, it'll be January 1 every year through December 31st. And that's not a change. And then grant category funding levels are mostly the same. So we'll talk about all of the differences, but we think they're good differences, and we'll explain that, but mostly the funding is the same. And we also got a question in registration, is the same amount of funding there? Are the same number of jurisdictions going to be able to be funded? We are expecting, we don't have exact figures yet, but we are expecting to have very similar to money than that we've had in the last couple of years. But we've made some changes that allow us to really focus this grant program, and we actually think we're going to be able to make more awards to more jurisdictions. That's the goal anyway. So, but I think that is a realistic expectation. So what has changed? I want to highlight what we think are better or really good things. 3-year grants are available again. A lot of you have really been chomping at the bit. If you didn't get one in the first round, 3-year grants are here, and we're going to talk about the details there. One thing we're really excited about, combination applications are now available for track 1, 2, and 3. We started out in year 2 with that combination for track 1 only. We expanded it to track 2 last year. Now we're going to offer those combined grants for track 3 as well. So you will be able to, in track 1, 2, or 3, all of your base outcomes, if you'd like to be a mentee, if you want training funds, all of that will be part of the base application. Really should simplify things for folks. And then also, this is a great simplification. All base grant activities, including in track 3, all mentorship outcomes, and no matter how you get them, whether you're a mentor or mentee, that's all fixed funding, meaning that you can spend that money any way you need to. And we'll go over a little bit of detail there. And a lot of these changes have come from you all. You all have given us good feedback. You've told us what's working. You've told us what needs to be improved. And we've applied that, and we're excited to have some changes to the program that we think are better. Other changes for 2025, and then right after this, we're going to get into the details, but there's more training, not any training, but there's more training available for track 1. That was something a lot of people asked for. There's also a little bit more funding for track 2. We've really tried to align in some ways track 2 and track 3 so that the same motivations and the same fundings are in track 2. There's still some differences, but we'll go through that in detail. But there are additional fundings, more funding in track 2. We did reduce mentee funding from $14,000 to $10,000, but that was not done in a vacuum. When we looked at the data, before we offered fixed funding, most mentees were spending about $8,000. So we upped that a little bit. We went to $10,000. The biggest difference here is we have never yet been able to fund all mentee applications. By dropping this, by dropping this from 14 to 10, we are able, at least in theory, to fund 40% more mentees. So it's still going to depend on overall funding. It's still going to depend on mentors. But what we tried to do is right-size mentee to enable more mentees to participate. We also reduced and we greatly simplified the track 3 base grant. We had a really complex formula that did some good things, but the one thing it did is it was really complicated, and it made track 3 base really expensive, meaning only a few could enter. And so we simplified that, and we said that, you can get a base funding of $10,000 per year to work on standards. And we'll talk about what the outcomes are required for that, but it's a lot simpler. And we'll talk about this more in just a second. Well, I'll move on to it right now. But we still have a big pot of money that comes through capacity building. And we've tried to really give some more guidance and focus on that. So the same kinds of funding are out there in terms of the amounts people can get. It's just configured a different way. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that everybody who was in track 1, and there were about 50 jurisdictions, actually I think about 65 jurisdictions in track 1 for the current year, we'd like them all to be able to go to track 2. We had 148 people this year in track 2. We'd like a whole lot of those to be able to go into track 3, and then capacity building with the really high dollar value will be extremely limited, extremely competitive. We'll talk more about that, but we're trying to have a place for everyone with that high level of funding, very fairly, very competitively awarded. And again, we'll talk quite a bit about that. Capacity building, Rance already talked about retail food safety networks. Capacity building has been expanded to explicitly support that. It still can support some of the things it did in the past, but we really want to be explicit about the value we see and the potential we see in networks. So there's a lot about that in capacity building. We tried to give you some clear guidance on special projects and also some explicit support for networks in special projects. And this isn't anything, this last bullet isn't anything you need to worry about for your application, but we are moving to a different way for you all to report on your SA9, your self-assessment of all 9 standards, and your CSIP. We have a combined tool that's going to make everything easier in the long run. There might be a little bit of work to transition from the old tools to the new, but what you're going to get is 2 things. One is a tool that once your SA9 is done, your CSIP's also done automatically, which is going to be really, really a time saver and really helpful. But the other thing it's going to do, it's going to be structured so that it can capture data that helps show progress. That's going to help you all. That's going to help NEHA, and it's going to help FDA to really understand how to maximize the value of this program. So that's going to help everybody in the long run. And NEHA is going to provide training. We're going to provide some tools. Nothing you need to worry about now, but that is something that's coming down the pipe, and that you'll start hearing a lot about in January, February if you win an award. So those are the other changes. We still have 5 grants available. That's down a little bit, but all the options are there. We have 3 base grants, tracks 1, 2, and 3. All of them have optional add-ons and some optional outcomes for mentee training, for standard, I'm sorry, that should say, oh no, standard 9 support is right. An updated self-assessment, capacity building is only for track 3, but those are all within the base grants. So everybody does 1 base grant. And then if you're in track 2 or 3, you've got the option to be a mentor instead of a mentee, and you would fill out a separate application to be a mentor, and you would have to not choose the mentee option in your base grant to do that. And then special projects optional add-on is open to anybody in track 2 and 3 if they'd like to apply for that. We'll talk about the funding and all the different things in the next few slides. So track 1 development base grant. It's real. This one is almost exactly the same as it has been for the last 2 years. You've got to be enrolled in the standards. Takes about a day, no big deal. It has fixed funding based on deliverables met for all but training funds. That means you don't need a detailed budget in the application for anything but training, and you also don't need receipts at the end. We are giving you the freedom to spend the money the way you need to, as long as you don't break any federal grant rules, which is going to not between NEHA and you. That's going to be between your auditors and you. You're going to be good to go. And we've got a slide to cover that. But fixed funding is a wonderful thing. It should significantly decrease the amount of administrative work you need to do, so you can focus on conforming with the standards. That's the goal. You do have 2 required outcomes for track 1. You've got to complete the self-assessment and a comprehensive strategic improvement plan. Again, we have a new tool for y'all to use to do that. And when you do those two things, you're going to get fixed funding of $5,000. You're going to turn in your form to FDA to prove that you've done the self-assessment of all 9 standards. You're going to send in your comprehensive strategic improvement plan, which is a page from the tool, to NEHA, and you're going to get paid $5,000. Super simple, but also super valuable, and it lets you spend the time on what really matters. In track 1, you can also ask for up to $7,500 in training. Ask for what you need. It can't go over $7,500, but it used to be you could only ask for a self-assessment and verification audit workshop. But now you can also go to the Conference for Food Protection, and you can also go to any of the FDA regional seminars offered. So a few more options there. We're experimenting with different options, and in the future, there might be even more. But for now, you've got 3 different options. We do want to point out there are a lot of different ways to take that self-assessment verification audit workshop. There's the in-person workshop, but there's also a couple free options. And so make sure you go to the website, because you might not need to ask for money for that. But we do encourage you, if your staff have not done that workshop, that's probably the first thing you want to do, whether that's in person or online. That's really important. So that's an important part of track 1. And then you also can ask to be a mentee and get fixed funding for meeting some specific deliverables there. So, again, through track 1, you can get up to $22,500 in funding through a single application. And this is all that you're qualified for. If you're in track 1, one application opens up all the doors that you can step through. Track 2, again, I think a couple exciting changes, very similar to last year, but you need to be enrolled in the standards. You need to have a current SA9 and a current CSIP. One question people ask, they say, I have a current SA9, August 2019 or later, but I don't have a CSIP done yet. But track 1 says it's for an SA9 and a CSIP. If you have a current SA9, you need to go into track 2. Track 1 is for startup or restart up. If you've got that current SA9, you've got the next couple months to get that CSIP done. It doesn't need to be perfect. It does need to talk about what you plan to do for all 9 standards, but get that done and enter. If you've got a current SA9, track 2 is the place for you to be. And if you've got a little bit more done, track 3 is another place you can be. We'll talk about that in a second. Again, track 2 is everything's fixed. Funding. Again, way easier to administer, all but training funds, just like track 1. Required outcome, you need to be working on at least 1 standard. Most track 2 grantees work on more than 1 standard. On average, they meet almost 2 standards and meet and audit almost 2 standards in the course of the year. So that's the bar that you're competing against, but you need to work on at least 1 standard. You also have the option to work toward meeting standard 2. And we have now aligned this with track 3, meaning that whatever your end goal is, if you're, and we've got some good guidance on this, FDA's got some excellent guidance on this. You can find that either linked from our website or directly on their site, but you're going to pick which kind of risk factor study is your goal and the approach that you're going to use. There's a file study approach that is a little bit simpler, a little cheaper to implement. And then there's the data collection approach and a hybrid approach. If you're going to, at the end of the day, use one of these more in-depth approaches, you get 10,000 in track 2 for working towards meeting standard 9. You don't have to meet it. It's generally a 5-year cycle to meet standard 9 or somewhere around there. But if you want to do the simpler approach, you can ask for 5,000. If you do the harder approach, you get 10,000. Again, we've got lots of guidance out there, and you can ask questions about that as well. Optional outcome. Retail food safety training, workshops, and conferences, anything having to do primarily or substantially with retail food safety, you can ask for up to $7,500. We do really want you to give us details. You're going to be able to change those. If you say, I wanted to go to the NEHA conference, but you have a conflict and now you want to go to CFP instead or AFTO, you're going to be able to make that change later on in the year. So, but tell us who you think you're going to send, what you think you're going to do. The more details we have, the more we can really make sure that you are on the right track, and that's up to $7,500. General training is not allowable. It really has to have a retail food safety component. And if you have any questions about that, reach out before you submit your application. Mentee funding, again, that's the same as in track 1. You can ask to be a mentee. We know a lot of track 2 people do, and we're hoping to be able to make a higher percentage of awards this year. You also, and this is new in track 2 before, if you needed to do an updated SA9 within 12 months of expiration, you had to do it on your own dime. You now have funding for that. You can get extra funding if you're in year 5 of your current self-assessment during 2025. You can ask for $3,000 as part of your grant. So that's exciting, and that ups the amount. The total amount that you can get through track 2 is $35,500 for 1 year if everything is approved. And I want to make one point that's important. Just because you apply for everything doesn't mean you'll be awarded to everything. This is competitive. If you're in the top tier of track 2 development-based grantees, you're going to get everything you ask for. If you're in the middle tier, you might get some. If you're in the bottom tier, you might just get your base funding. So again, really work hard to explain what you're doing, why, and how it's going to help you conform to the standard. It's going to make a big difference for you. Track 3, I think this is the one most people are very curious and interested in. We did make some changes, and we've got a footnote here that's really important for y'all. So track 3, maintenance and advancement base. Eligibility, you need to be enrolled in the standards. That's old news. You need to have a current SA9 and a CSIP. That's old news. Current 9 is August 1, 2019 or later. The new rule is you must have successfully met and audited at least 3 different standards in the last 5 years, August 1, 2019 or later. That caught some folks by surprise. If you're not quite there, but you're really close and you really want to get into track 3, the footnote down here says, please reach out to the NEHA-FDA RFFM grant support team with eligibility questions or concerns. We may be able to make some allowances and get some commitments from you. The best thing you can do is hurry up and meet and audit at least 3 standards. If you can't get that done, if you can't get an audit scheduled or something like that, let us know what's going on. We may be able to say, yeah, go ahead and apply for track 3. But if you don't meet this requirement, please don't apply for track 3 unless you've talked to us and getting that go ahead. And we will work with FDA to talk about, whether or not we're going to invite you to enter track 3. But that's not meant to be a impediment for folks. What we really want is track 3 to be about folks who have proven they're really serious about progressing through the standards. They're not just in a loop where they're always working on one standard. We really want it to be about progress, but we really want people who have really done that work to be able to enter track 3. So again, ask questions if you've got any concerns there. Required outcome, you must maintain all the standards you've already met, and you must meet at least 1 new standard. And this is not 1 new standard a year. You need to meet and audit 1 new standard by the end of the 3-year grant period. There are some footnotes in the guidance about that. The footnotes talk about, sometimes you have a legislative mandate that you can't meet all the standards. You might have already met all 9 standards. You're still invited to be in 3. There's footnotes about that. And I see Jessica has her hand up. She's on the grant program support team. Jess, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just switching back and forth between chat and Q&A and hit it on accident, Art. I'm sorry. Okay, great. All right. And again, Q&A is the best place to put questions, but I also see some of them in chat, and Jessica is looking at all those. Okay, that's a little bit about the requirement. Again, 1 new standard over 3 years. I will say that the average track 3 grantee over the last 3 years met a little more than 3 standards. So know that you're competing against others, but that's the minimum requirement. And then some things change if you ask for capacity building. We'll talk about those on the next slide. But you also have, if you're in track 3 maintenance and management base, you got to be working on standards 1 through 8, but you also need to be working towards meeting or maintaining standard 9. That should be say meeting or maintaining. I'm sorry, I got lost here a little bit. So you are somewhere in the 5-year cycle. If you're in track 3, you're somewhere in the cycle of either trying to meet standard 9 for the first time, trying to update it
if you've already met it before and keep it up to date, or you're maintaining it. So we have a lot more details on our website. And like I said, FDA's got some great guidance there. So really read that through and ask questions if you've got more detailed questions there. You've also got options here. You've got the same options that Track 2 has. Any retail food safety training up to 7,500. You can ask to be a mentee within this application itself. You can, if your SA9 needs to be updated either in 25, 26, or 27, you can ask for $3,000 and get it within that year. And then you've got that optional outcome, the really big one, that you can get up to $300,000, which is maximized at $100,000 per year, meaning you can't have a budget where in year 1 you spend 50 and then you spend 125 in year 2 and year 3. It's a $300,000 cap, but it's also capped at $100,000 a year. So keep that in mind when you're putting those budgets in. In Track 3, you do need budgets, but only if you opt into training, you need a training budget. And if you opt into capacity building, we want to see 3 one-year budgets for each grant year for that. And you can ask for the minimum here is $45,000 a year, $45,000, $15,000 a year. The maximum is $380,500, a little bit over $125,000 a year. So again, and that's if all outcomes are awarded. And this will work the same way. If you're in the top tier, you're going to get everything you ask for. Capacity building, we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's going to be extremely competitive, but the best applications for Track 3 and capacity building will get the most funding. Take your time, put your time in, do a great job of explaining how this is going to have an impact on you and maybe on an impact on your city, on your region, on the nation as well. And again, with the eligibility requirement, if you've got any concerns at all, call us and we will work those through with you. Capacity building optional outcome. It is not standalone. It's now part of Track 3. That's a really good reason. We want you to have 3-year funding, and we want you to be able to give us your 3-year plans. So capacity building is within Track 3. You've got to be in Track 3. You've got to qualify for Track 3 to get that. One more thing I didn't say, I'll go back to Track 3 for a second. We are asking you to tell us, what are your plans for year 1? What are you gonna work on? What are you gonna meet? What are you gonna audit in year 1? What are you gonna do in year 2? What are you gonna do in year 3? That's gonna help us. That's gonna help us do 2 things. It's gonna help us really know who's really gonna advance the standards for themselves, but it's also gonna help us to help you stay on track during the year. But that's going to be a big part as you think about capacity building. That's going to be a big part of how we think about who are the ones that need to be funded. So it's offered as an optional add-on with Track 3. It's expected to be highly competitive. I expect that we might get somewhere around 100 applications for capacity building. I expect that we're going to be able to award less than 50. So again, really read the guidance carefully, ask questions, watch the website for FAQs, and do your best job if you want to get that. Have a backup plan. If you were to apply for Track 3, but you didn't capacity building, what are you going to do? We are, by the way, going to if there are folks that are awarded a Track 3 grant, but not capacity building, but they applied for it, we're going to give you a chance to update that application because capacity building does have implications on how many standards you need to meet, things like that. So again, go for broke, but have a backup plan if you're thinking about capacity building. So we have kind of 4 different, we're going to ask you to tell us what's your, I forget what we call it, priority area, or what's your team, help me out. What are we calling the choice between these 4 options? You can look in the grant guidance and in the portal, but we're going to ask you to specify, are you hiring a retail program standards coordinator where you can hire or share a 1.0 FTE worth of funding among current staff, different ways you can do that. But if you are going to only have a retail program standards coordinator, if that's the goal of your application, you're going to need to meet 2 additional standards in addition to into the one required to be in Track 3. So if you're going for the retail program standards coordinator, we're going to ask you to meet and audit 3 standards. As you get up near 7, 8, 9 standards, we're going to let you maintain all those standards, but you might want to think about expanding beyond just a grant that serves your own program. So, and we'll talk about that more as we move on to the other ones. So retail program standards coordinator, if that's the goal of capacity building, you need to have in your application that you're going to meet and audit 3 standards. If you wanted to hire a network coordinator or support an existing network coordinator, again, up to 1.0 FTE funding, up to 300,000, no more than 100,000 in a single year. You must meet all the requirements for the specific network outcomes you choose. And if you look in the guidance and the application, if you're a network coordinator, you're going to have to be serving at a minimum 4 jurisdictions outside your own. And you're going to have to be working to help them enroll in the standards, do an updated SA9, work on their CSEP, meet and audit standards. You're going to be helping others make progress. The track 3 part of the application, you're going to talk about your own progress, but in the network coordinator part, you're going to talk about how am I going to help the, at least 4 other jurisdictions. Some people may want to, maybe you've got an existing retail coordinator, you've already met 5, 6 standards, and you're saying, I'm ready to start branching out. You can apply to be a combination RPS network coordinator support. Again, no more than 1.0 FTE total funding. If you do this, you've got to meet 1 additional standard in addition to the track 3 requirements. So that means you've got to meet and audit 2 standards by the end of your grant. Plus, you've got to be helping at least 2 other jurisdictions. So these are minimum requirements. Remember that we're going to fund those who are going to really move the program, but those are the minimum requirements if you're a combination. And if you want to do an other retail program standards conformance project, we're not really putting any limits on you. It's really a blue sky opportunity for you to propose your custom projects, but in that you should clearly state the value proposition. How are you helping FDA grow the retail program standards, the program itself? And you also should be stating some measurable outcomes so that we can say at the end of a 3-year grant period, yes, it was valuable, and yes, they did it. So, and again, there's more guidance in both the guidance and in the system. But this add-on within track 3 requires 3 detailed budgets, actually year 1, 2, and 3, and up to $300,000, maximum of $100,000 a year. This is a 3-year grant. I'm very close to done, and then we'll really start going through those questions. But mentorship, mentor optional add-on. The only difference here is mentor is a standalone application. It's not a mentor-mentee. Anybody who wants to be a mentee should use the optional add-on within their grant. Anybody who wants to be a mentor should open up an extra grant, do this grant application. It's really the same as last year. The funding's the same. 1 to 5 mentees, you'll get anywhere from 12 to 24,000. And all of this funding is fixed funding for deliverables met. You're going to help a number of grantees through the program. You're going to do at least 1 site visit, and you're going to attend the year-end meeting. And for that, you're going to get a payment somewhere between $12,000 and $24,000. If you don't meet all of these deliverables, if something happens, like for instance, if you do everything and you just have a conflict and nobody from your team ends up, maybe you have a hurricane and you can't go to the year-end meeting, you'll get, you'll get your fixed funding less the $3,000. So again, don't worry about that. Do everything well. Almost everybody who has been in the mentorship program has been hitting their deliverables that we've seen so far. We do want you still. Consider being a mentor if you've never been one before. Considering to be a mentor again for CTY25, and we really want to thank you for your past support. If you only feel like you can mentor 1 person, we're happy to have you. If you can mentor 5, we're happy to have you. We're not going to. We might ask you if we need more mentors, and you said you only want to do 2, we might ask you to do 3, but we would never make you do 3. We always want you to stay within your comfort zone with what you really feel like you could do. So we thank you that you've been so faithful. We thank you that last year was the biggest mentor application year ever, and we hope to see that again. One other thing I should say is, for the most part, we tend to award all mentor applications. I can only think of 1 mentor application that did not get funded over the last 3 years. So you've got a really good chance if you want to do this, but don't put your guard down, write a really good application. The special projects add-on is a separate grant application. It's open for tracks 2 and 3. it's very similar. We really want to be clear. It used to say it was about the integrated food safety system. It really is about bringing forward the retail program standards, which does support the integrated food safety system. So that's all in there. We also want you to think about how can you support sustainable retail food safety networks. And those won't necessarily be preferenced, but they will be considered along with other ideas. And remember, we are looking for those ideas that have the most bang for the buck in terms of growth and support of the retail program standards. And again, it requires a detailed budget, and up to $20,000 is once again available. So again, we'll wrap this up and get to Q&A, but SLTT participants, we wouldn't be here without you. We thank you that you're here today. We thank you that you're considering applying again. Team FDA, thank you. We know this was a rough year for FDA administratively, but we are over the starting line. That's an awesome place to be. Thanks to the retail food specialists, to our wonderful project officer, Mary Beth, to the joint advisory group from FDA who leads us, and then FDA leadership who continues to fund this program and grow it year after year. And also to the partners that make this happen, to NACCHO, NEHA, and all the people involved there, the Conference for Food Protection, the Retail Collaborative, and all the different organizations that come alongside and help us, and other partners as well, including the industry that weighs in from time to time. So make plans to apply today. When you can download this from the website, it's going to have all our contact information for questions as they arise. We've got our link here. This is what the grant portal, that picture is what the grant portal button now looks like. Just hover over that picture, click, and you will be on the grant portal landing page. And we also have a code here for you to download and some of the key dates. But we open today. The application portal is now open. We close on November 20. We've got another webinar coming up on October 29. You may have additional questions by then. Others may ask questions you haven't thought of. So even if you were here today, it's going to be roughly the same thing, probably a little quicker, and get to the Q&A quicker. But with that, Jessica, maybe hit as many that you can and throw those to Jenna, and then you probably have your head around this more than I do. So go ahead and hit some of those questions.
Hi, okay. Rance has been a trooper here, running through them as well. So thank you so much, Rance. You guys had a lot of really good questions today. One that we got several times was, how many base grant applications can you submit? Can we submit a track 3 application and then also a track 2 just in case our track 3 doesn't get funded? The answer to this will be no. Each jurisdiction can only submit one base grant each year. So make sure you work extra hard, reach out to the grants team, retailgrants@neha.org. If you have questions about your qualifications for track 3, or anything else that you can put into your application.
And Jessica, let me interrupt that. One thing we're going to do, if we see a track 2 application that comes in and you shouldn't be in track 2, we're going to roll that over into track 1. Same thing with track 3. We're not going to say, oh, you reach for this guy and you're not going to get funded. We're going to work with people. So make sure you're in the right place, which you qualify for, but you don't have to worry. There's no need. In other words, there's no need for you to apply for more than one. Your chances of award are just as high with going through one track as if you were to try to do 2. Rance, anything you would add to that? Is that fair?
You're spot on.
Okay, great.
Another one, super easy. The recording will be sent out afterwards. So you'll have access to all the slides and all the information in here. I would also point out that the NEHA RFFM website does have a copy of the grant guidance, which will have a very detailed description of all of the touch points in the slides. So if you need additional information on what the requirements are for each track, the grant guidance does have it broken down very well so that you can kind of follow along for where your jurisdiction fits in. So make sure you check out the grant guidance. It'll be a big help. And always feel free to reach out if you're unsure of which track you fall into. And Another one would be, are we able to apply to be a mentee again if we were a mentee in a previous year? Absolutely. If you need the assistance, please always apply to be a mentee. If you were a mentor, we would encourage you to be a mentor again. But if you need help in the track 3, mentee option is always available for you as well. In any track you can apply to, in tracks 2 and track 3, you can be a mentor or a mentee, but in track 1, your only option is a mentee. Sorry, I'm going to try and skim through a couple other.
Rand says she's skimming. I'll ask you, were any of the merge that you read that you want to answer?
I've kind of been overwhelmed answering them. So I think we probably, Jessica, we probably got a number at the bottom that that maybe if we focus on those that have not been answered yet, and then we'll put the rest. Art, we're going to do a FAQ, correct, on and take these questions and put them out there as well.
Yep. Yeah, we will be publishing all the written information. Jared Samples has a hand up while you guys kind of pull up the next couple questions. Jared, hopefully they can give you the ability to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for putting on this webinar. Really appreciate it. My question is, we currently are in track 3. We've got a program. We've got a retail standards coordinator currently. My question is, if we want to take advantage of the combo network coordinator, program coordinator, is it possible for us to have that individual do like a 0.8 FTE and then I take over a 0.2 FTE to be the network to help our local jurisdictions?
Answer is absolutely yes, Jared. And that's clear in the grant guidance that it's hiring somebody new, it's repurposing somebody and putting them in a new role, or it's several people meeting those goals. So again, you have the flexibility to make that work the way you need. The only caveat is keeping it down to that 1.0 level.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I've got a couple I can ask, and then Jess, I'll throw it back to you. I think this is important. The question is, how does this grant help fund environmental inspection positions and training for those? We did clarify that this year. You should not be hiring environmental inspectors with this funding. That's not the purpose of it. There were a few cases where that happened, but that is not allowable. Training, yes. Support, yes. Taking an inspector and giving them the role of a retail program standards coordinator, yes, but not funding new inspectional positions. That really should be done by your state program. What else do you have, Jess?
We've got one about track 3 requirements. And the question is, what if the only standards that they have left to meet will take longer than the track 3 3-year period to actually meet those standards?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one. Please go ahead and use the email and put that question in so we can officially answer you. But those are the things that are going to be allowable. If you've met the minimum requirement, but you can't meet 3, you're just going to be asked to explain what your plans are and what you're doing and how long it's going to take. So yes, that's not going to be an impediment. We definitely don't want to say, hey, you've already met 9 standards, so you're not qualified anymore. I mean, we really do. This is to serve you and help you, but the details are going to be really important. And when you ask that question, we'll be able to, number one, discuss it with FDA, but really give you a detailed answer. So make sure you have all, tell us how many standards you've already met, which ones are going to take longer than 3 years, give us some good details when you send in an email.
Okay. These next ones, hopefully we can run through kind of quickly. Our inspection database systems and allowable expense. So these systems would be used typically in a track 2 or a track 3 grant, and this would be if your fixed funding base grant. So in those instances, you are able to use that funding how it would best suit your jurisdiction. So if you need to update your inspection database, system in order to make progress through your standard, then that is an allowable cost through FDA guidelines. The non-allowable costs that I'll flag real quick, those are going to be listed in the grant guidance as well. So even though it is fixed funding for most of the base grants, we do encourage you to review the grant guidance non-allowable costs to make sure that you don't fall into any of those items. But the database system is allowable.
Yeah. And I'll add a little bit more to that, Jessica. Non-allowable, basically the one with fixed funding, non-allowable is buying vehicles, that's prohibited with federal funds, paying for food at a meeting, that's prohibited, and new construction. Those things are prohibited. There might be one more, but I basically I've outlined in the guidance what are the federal prohibitions that apply to the fixed funding. Everything else you can really, anything that serves meeting the standards, you can use your fixed funding for. I did want to highlight the computer system question with capacity building. I think buying an expensive system with the capacity building grant is allowable. I don't think there's anything that precludes that. But remember that FDA really wants to see growth. And, I think we really need to think about, you need to think about as you're writing, how will that, is that going to be something that you could leverage beyond just a single jurisdiction? Those are the kind of things that I'll be asking. And remember that you will be competing against retail program standard coordinator applications and networking applications. So think through, if you want to put something like that primarily serves your own jurisdictions, really think that through when you're putting an application in.
Okay, our next one, we completed a standard 7 self-assessment on 8/20/2019. Since August 2019 is the cutoff for the new self-assessment being due, should we proceed and do a new self-assessment or proceed with track 2? So I guess what our update would need to be the full self-assessment of all 9 standards. This question seems to be specifically for one standard. So in order to qualify for track 2, you will need to there's an option in the track 2 funding to say that you'll redo your self-assessment of all 9 standards in 2025. Are my dates correct there, Art? Before I continue?
It's just got to be after August 1, 2019. So yeah, it should be within 2025. Yes.
Okay, so there you get an additional $3,000 fixed funding to complete that. You'll just include that as an add-on in your grant application if you need to redo your self-assessment of all 9 standards in 2025.
And just let me weigh in on that. I mean, we really want track 1 to be about you're brand new to the program, or we used to do a lot and we haven't done anything in the last 6 years and now we want to start. That's really what it's for. If your SA9's out of date, reach out to us, but also reach out to your specialist. I mean, I think the biggest question is, can you get it done? Can you get one done by December 31st? And we can probably work with you. But really, if you want to be in track 2 and you feel like you are having trouble, reach out to us. We'll work with FDA to see if there's anything that can be done. We might not be able to. It might just be too much of a stretch, and you do need to stay in track 1, but that's not the default. Reach out to us, and we'll try to work with you.
And Art and Jess, we might want this person to just reach out to Retail Grants on that, because I was reading this a little bit differently. And I was supposing some of the stuff there, but I was thinking that they were in track 3, and this third standard they had of self-assessment expires before the end of the grant cycle there. And should they, and if that's the case, if that's the way I was reading it, I would recommend you hurry up and do a self-assessment of standard 7 so that you still meet that 3-track, that's 3 standard cycle in order to be part of the track 3. But I could be wrong on that. So please reach out to us at Retail Grants.
No, that makes sense too. I went backwards and you went forwards for their grant. So no, thanks.
Well, and those were 2 great answers. So I'm sure people had those questions. So any more?
Yeah, so this one I think probably applies to a lot of you is, do we need to finish reporting for our current track 1 before we can apply for track 2 in 2025? No, we just encourage you to make note that you have a current open grant. So if you're completing your CSIP and your SA9 this year, put that in your 2025 application, and we'll follow up. So it doesn't hinder you from being awarded. We make note of who has open grants, and we'll follow up with you before you are able to receive official funding and everything for your 2025 grant. But you get to finish your current grant projects throughout the end of the year. We don't cut off any of your working time this year in order for you to apply for next year.
Jess, I'm going to throw out a real specific on that. You're a Track 1 grantee. You don't have a current SA9, but you're going to get it done with your current grant in December of 2025. Apply for Track 2 and explain that, and you're good to go.
Okay. Can a jurisdiction applying for a network coordinator also have the coordinator take part in mentoring?
We have some read the grant guidance on that. What we don't want is a network coordinator to also mentor and get money double dipping, really do no extra work and get 2 pots of money. We really want to see, a network coordinator. We really want to see them working with others they're not mentoring, or we want very specific different outcomes. So be very cognizant that we're going to be looking very carefully at the crossover between mentor and capacity building, and make sure that they're distinct activities. And like I said, read the grant guidance carefully. And if you still have questions, reach out. And if we get some questions on that are relevant to others, we'll be posting that on the FAQs as well.
Okay, I've got one more, Art. You think we can squeeze it in?
Yeah.
If I am the retail RPS coordinator for my department, can we use the Track 3 funding for me and then hire a new inspector to help us meet Standard 8?
As long as the funding, Mary Beth, if you're still here, I think that's okay. As long as the funding is used to pay for a coordinator. I don't know. That gets a little close to supplanting. Maybe put that in writing and let us adjudicate that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a better idea. Some things are more complicated than others.
Yep.
And we need to make sure we're giving the best advice across the board to anybody, not just for you. So let's do that.
Yeah. Yep. And I'll just mention, there is a federal supplanting rule. You're not supposed to take federal funding to replace money that you already have, so we do have to look at that pretty closely. I think that's probably it. If there's I'll stay longer if people want to. We are very close to the end. We thank you for being here. We are going to, like I said, I'd encourage you all to think about coming on October 29. I'd encourage you to keep those questions coming. The best way to give us questions is via email, just so that we have really good details and that we can distill that into an FAQ that we share with others. But you can also call us. Again, we'll be sharing this, but all of our contact information is here. Rance, anything you want to say to close? And then like I said, we'll stay and answer more questions if people want.
No, thank you everybody for being here. It looks like we had a large number of folks coming in, and the questions are really good questions. You definitely understand the program, and we want to thank you for being part of it. Art, thank you so much for pulling this all together. Jessica, spot on the work you're doing there. So thank you so much. From everybody at NEHA, NEHA-FDA, Art's team, CFP. I just want to thank you folks for being part of this program.
All right. And with that, if there's more questions, I have a couple more on my list here in front of me. One, is this grant available for individuals or corporations outside the U.S. and Canada? It's only for U.S. states and tribes and territories. That's what the program's for. So no foreign, not even Canada. Sorry, Canada. Other questions? I see Jenna Fisher. I love your show, by the way, Jenna. Are we able? Okay. Jenna, if you want to try to speak, how are we doing, Evan?
There we go. Should have the ability now.
Okay. Jenna,
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
we can, loud and
Okay,
clear, crystal
perfect.
clear.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking my question. I did ask it in the Q&A and Rance answered it. I just want to be sure. So I work on the state level. All of our authority for retail food lies within the local level. We have applied and received these grants in the past. I just want to be sure with the changes, this would make us not eligible to apply now. Is that correct?
Because what?
We
Why?
didn't complete retail food inspections at the state level.
I would send us an email that we can have adjudicated with FDA, because this has to do with enrolling in the program. I mean, I think we'd really, the answer might be no, but send us the specifics.
Okay, yeah, we are enrolled and we have received the funding, for the last, at least since I've been there, the last 3 years.
I think I don't know that. Yeah, let us look.
Okay.
I think there's a very good chance you'll be eligible.
Yeah, and thanks for on that, Jenna. It's for the retail program standard. It's not necessarily for retail food inspections there.
Okay.
So if the and that's why I was putting in that, possibly if you're doing state inspections on manufactured food, flexible funding model would probably be more appropriate. But reach out, every jurisdiction, every state's different there, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Jessica, I saw yours, and David Engelskirchen and Jared Samples. I don't know if your hand's still up, but Jessica and then David.
I just want to flag something that has come up a few times. Track 3, Standard 9. That work on Standard 9 is a requirement in a Track 3 grant. So you do need to make progress on that, have a plan to make progress on that standard each year throughout the 3-year grant program.
But it is meet or maintain. So if you've already met standard 9, your work is to just continue in that 5-year cycle to do your next risk factor study. If that didn't clear it up, ask again. David Engelskirchen.
Hey, Art, I'm going to try to help answer the question that Jenna asked. So as I understand it, the state of Montana at her office, they support those locals that are enrolled in the retail program standards. So I guess in what I'm thinking, there must be some sort of way they can participate, because if it weren't for them, the jurisdictions wouldn't get the support they need to adopt the food code and to do all the other things that they do. So hopefully y'all can figure that out. But I would never think that somebody like the state of Montana, as active as they are supporting their locals, that they wouldn't be eligible for the funding.
No, and we haven't made any changes that should preclude. So yeah, send it over. We'll adjudicate that for sure. And Jared Samples. Is that a new hand, Jared, or was that from before?
Sorry, I was on mute on my end. So we're in the same boat as Montana, except that we don't even have a manufactured food program. So we are strictly there to support the locals. So it's very hard for us to meet certain standards because we do not do retail food inspections.
Yeah.
So this built-in requirement with the new Track 3, well, I'm specifically talking about the capacity grant where we've now got to meet 3 additional standards. We've met internally the ones that we conceivably can, but there's a lot of nuances with having to do inspections that make it very challenging to meet those standards, if that makes sense.
And we do have asterisks in the guidance about that, Jared. Put in your question, but I will say both of you all might really already not know it, but you might be fulfilling a lot of the network coordinator roles without using that name. So yeah, let's talk more on both of those, both Montana and in your Idaho. Is that right, Jared?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Wendy Bell.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Or good afternoon.
Yes.
I haven't had a break today. If you can go back to the track 3, I just want to make sure I'm clear because we are trying to pursue this. And so are we required to ask for that funding for the risk factor study since it's a required outcome?
Yeah, it always has been. You always had to, the risk factor study is part of meeting standard 9. So you always either had to say, we've already met it, or we're working to meet it. And so you just have to be somewhere on that pathway. What is your, Wendy, what is your status? Have you just not done anything with standard 9?
Oh no, we meet it. We meet it. I'm talking about more of the funding component of it. So do we just request the funding if we need it, but we just still notate that we're working towards maintaining it, correct?
Yeah, this got changed and I didn't notice it at the beginning. This should say required outcome, work towards meeting or maintaining standard 9. It's really, it's required for everybody to either already have met it and be maintaining it or working towards meeting it. That's the requirement.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll be good. All right, other questions? Well, thank you, everyone. I'm with Wendy. I'm ready for lunch. It's been a long morning. So, you know, again, we are, I'll scroll to that slide, but we are a phone call or an email away. Ask your questions, get into the portal early, work through the application, go through all the questions, make sure you understand everything, and shoot us as many questions as you need. We're here to help. And I just want to highlight before we get off, Jenna had to leave early. Jenna Brown from our team, Jessica Varela, and Carol Johnstone are manning the Fresh Desk emails and phones all the time. And we really appreciate them. And they appreciate you all and have loved meeting some of you at the NEHA conference and other places. So thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day.